Hello all, much love to everyone out there right now. Today's video, what I have for you is a follow-up video sort of to this video I posted about the Beastie Boy intro and the Led Zeppelin Levee drums. Some people were asking about getting these files and the samples and the work that I had done. And so I went to just share just my project and then just use the your own copy because I couldn't redistribute the Levee breaks without permission, of course, which I'm not going to do that. So there's a lot of copyright stuff out there right now. I'm actually not even going to play that intro in this video so I can maybe avoid that and see how close this is. So what I have done is I went into a church chapel. I went to my mom's church. It was totally empty and recorded drum samples in this huge open chapel. So I call them sanctuary drums. It's actually a drum library I've been working on for a while. So after putting a little bit of post effects on them, similar to what I did in the video I showed you there, so it came out like this. So hopefully you find that very similar to a very familiar rock anthem intro, and I'll show you what I've done here so far to get this sound. You'll receive, I'm going to put together this package and I'll put it on my server. And so you'll get these files. You'll get the Logic project file, and then you'll get a zip of all the one-shots of just the samples, which you can use, or you can use this EXS sample instrument that I created and then the audio files for that. So that's everything that I have inside this zip that I'm going to put on my server that you can download. And now I'll give a little bit of an explanation of what this project has in it so you can start to tweak around with some of the settings if you want to and see how I achieved this. I also included, like I said, this instrument so you can play this live with a keyboard. And it's got about 6 different velocity layers. And the snare. So of course you could play all the other beats like you saw in the previous video I did. And that's using the instrument, the EXS instrument that I created. So in this Logic project, I did a sample library pretty much. It's a sample library I've been working on for a while, like I mentioned, called Sanctuary Drums. And I was really close to completing it about a year and a half ago. And for some reason, I just never released it. I am a perfectionist. And so I just wouldn't put it out there. So I'm going to really soon, I think, because of the outcome you can get with certain things. So what I did is I made EXS 24 instruments for each one of the mic positions. So let's listen again. I'm going to turn off the reverb. So that's no space on there now. All the reflections and everything you're hearing is my natural room that I did. And let's solo out just the room. Pretty close, just listening to the room. And then the stage. And then the close. Pretty neat, huh? If you're wondering too, this instrument down here, this is just, I had it on with some electric drums, and I was just filling in with some different frequencies at one point, and I just left it there, and it doesn't have anything assigned to it, so, but it's just another MIDI track. And down here are some other beats and things that you can listen to that I did when I was doing the recording. This is the MIDI track from the recording that I did on the electric drums on the Rolands that you see in the previous video. So I just left them there that you can use if you'd like to and mess around with. So it's a decent sized sanctuary. I'd say it would fill about 800 people or so, give or take. So in this room, And I think I took some pictures too, and I'll try to see if I can find those or post them. So, but in this room, like I had all these different mic positions. So what I did to treat it more as like just a drum mic situation is I made an instrument for each mic position. And I know I could have done groups and different things like that. And I've done that. I've been working on that. I'm actually working on a dedicated instrument. So it's just a plugin. And so I layered each one of these to get a very natural big drum sound. And then I used a very similar reverb to what I used in the previous video, where I put a pre-delay. And I set my tempo to 70, which is really close to the Levee song. And I set the pre-delay to 1/16. And then I did a little bit of EQing with it to get it close to their room. And I did want to make it kind of my own, of course. You have to, right? And I wanted to make it full and modernized. So my bass drum is a little more full. It's got a little more meat to it and a little more depth. And the only thing I did post-processing, besides you see there's some compressors on some of the channels, is I added, of course, that space, and I used a drum plate reverb. It doesn't. I kind of went through some reverbs, and it did change the environment quite a bit, of course, as it should, especially with putting that much saturation on it. But once I EQ'd it, it kind of like didn't really matter which one I wanted to go with. I just wanted to go with one that really emphasized the strikes more than the booming or airiness, because I had enough of that from my natural recordings of the room. And so then the only thing that I have that you may not have that doesn't come default with Logic is I put this Ozone 8 on here. And the only reason I did that from Isotope, the only reason I did that was to just give a little glue, and then I put some analog saturation on there to give it a little more of a vintage warmth. So, I mean, you can even bypass that, of course. But if you have Ozone 8, then you'll have this exact setup as it is. But if not, it's okay. You probably have some of your own favorite plugins. And then having this project, the whole point of it is so that you can tweak around and mess around with some of these settings. These samples were not done in the intention of copying that particular Led Zeppelin drum set. The samples were done in the intention of making something really new, like a big drum sample library. Or the potential to have it, where you could have close mics, or you could, of course, bring in these huge room mics along with it. So what the goal when recording was just to make a clear sample library. It wasn't necessarily to mimic these drums. So I did have to do some post EQing. And finally doing this match EQ from Logic, which if you have never used it, it's really cool. You give it a reference, and you drag in a reference, which I dragged in a reference, and then you click Learn from the current, and then it'll match it and gives you this EQ curve. And of course you can modify it and change some settings with it and things like that. And I did a little bit to really get the sound that I wanted. And so I'm pleased with it. I've played with it. I've played it for some people and everything, and they agree that's really close, And I wonder how close. I wonder if this video will flag a copyright. I don't know. We'll find out. Hopefully not. I mean, I kind of want to make something my own, and I hope this is just a very good learning experience for all of us, and at the same time, a really powerful sample library and that we can use to make some very energized beats. What's cool about Logic is when I change this tempo, the space reverb will change with it. So this is set to 1/16. And so if you're doing a different beat that isn't similar to that classic rock song, then when you change this tempo, it'll change that pre-delay accordingly with it. That's pretty neat. So so that's a tour of this project and what you're getting. And you can see the control that you have on these different instruments that I've included. I've included bass, snare, and hi-hat, and the 3 different mic positions. 4, let's see, close, stage, overhead, and room. Yeah, so 4 different mic positions on 3 instruments to have some really interesting control over it. And you saw, of course, the goal that I had in mind and the and how close it came to it. And so you can have a different goal or no goal at all and be creative with it. And so please, of course, share these and share your work that you've done with it with me. I'd love to hear some of the things that you guys create with it. And yes, it'd be incredibly nice of you to tag me in any of the creations that you do post. Please follow me here on YouTube, subscribe for more. Follow me on Instagram at Drum Pop. And if you want to follow me on Compose, I'm an artist on there now. That's a place where different musicians can collaborate on projects. It's really fun. I've collaborated on over a dozen projects. It's if you want to go and collaborate with me, please go find me on Compost. I am Nathan Detroit on there. Okay, I'll see you again here soon. Bye.
Get that, boom, boom.